I'm Ryan Osbeck with Copeland Canada, representing Vilter compressors. I'm here today in Brantford, and we're going to go over how to remove and replace a gate rotor and a VSS 601 compressor. Start by removing the gate rotor cover and the tubings, the oil tubing. The machine was returned to service after your inspection. You're definitely going to want to keep in mind that there's going to be oil inside this cavity, and you're going to want to have a tray ready to catch that oil. On the top cover, we're going to remove the 6 cap screws that hold the bearing, rates, and location. Next, we'll remove the flange cover bolts. There are 2 threaded holes that you can use the bolts to push back through to lift this cover up and off and away. Use caution when lifting it up and away because there will be a series of shims located underneath. You want to keep track of those and try your best not to damage them. Next inside, we have our bearing retainer plate, shaft retaining plate for the inner race. Remove that. So we're going to remove the retaining plate and set that off to the side. It may be necessary to use a puller to remove these. You can purchase these pullers. You can set against, to press against to lift this retaining housing out. It's a fairly simple puller style. You can do it with an H-bar. You can purchase the tool through Vilter. We have these, we do make these and have them available. They are for installation and disassembly. Again, with this being a training compressor, this is a simple one for me to pull away. And that is our bearing retaining retainer. Set that aside. Now that we've gotten to this point, we have exposed our support, retaining shaft, and all we have is our lower piece. It's a series of bolts that we will remove. We'll drop that down. You want to be careful, especially on bigger machines as well, because there is this weight here. It will fall away. So you gotta make sure you're supporting it the entire time. And then once you remove it, you've exposed the roller bearing. Both sets of bearings out of the way. We can now twist, roll away. So your new kit is going to come with damper pin, gate rotor, the O-rings that you need to do the job, a new seal cover gasket, the retaining circlip, Loctite, and then the associated shims onto the disassembly portion of the gate rotor. So we're going to get in there, we're going to remove the circlip. Remember, safety glasses when performing tasks like this because it's under tension. From there, you'll have the plate come up on the retaining, and then that will leave our gate rotor. Gate rotor can come up and our support. So we have our gate rotor, our support, our two clamps. Do a little bit more of a further examination of the gate rotor. You can look for what would be referred to as imprinting. That's impressions being made where this plate is being forced into the support fingers, and that's due to liquid. Yeah, this machine trying to compress liquid, and it's compressing the Riton material in the gate rotor. This bushing would get pushed out and a new one pressed in. We're not going to change those parts today. I'm just doing a disassembly to show how to do it. For the inner race, or for the roller bearing, the outer race on the roller bearing, I'm going to just remove the circlip on the inside, and then we can pry out the bearing. The other one, there is a tool that's made by Vilter and available that gets underneath here and will press and pull this off. Alternatively, you can use a bearing puller or cut it. You can even cut it off with the cutting wheel, crack it on the side, split it open. This is an interference fit, so a new one can be heated on, or it can be lightly driven into place, or carefully driven into place using a brass drift. The main bearing, or the thrust bearings, I should say, it's a retaining ring. So the inner race retainer is the plate that we already took off, and it locks in from the backside or the outside. The outer race is held in place and located by these rings here. You take these bolts out, bring them up, and then pull or press the outer races of the thrust bearings out. These bolts will get then torqued back up, installed with some Loctite so that they don't loosen off, and then reinstalled with the new bearings. You can chill the bearings, or you can press them in. They are a looser fit, not an interference fit, hence the lock ring that holds them in place to load the bearings. You're going to clean everything up, of course, because that's good practice. And then you're just going to do then you're going to reverse the steps for reassembly. You're going to push your new bushing in. And you're going to set it back in place on top of the support. Something that needs to be kept in mind is that can be put in accidentally on the wrong side, and then that truly changes the way this will fit. You'll actually have an exposure of the metal once this gate sits down. You can actually cause some serious damage. So it's important to remember which side goes down, and after you do fit it, make sure that you don't have any metal exposed on either side of that bushing for clearance. We'll drop our retaining ring just to hold everything down in place, and then we'll put the circlip back on. Again, you should be using the new ones. I'm just going to reuse the old one because I'm reusing everything old here. This does have a chamfered edge. Nice roll on one side, hard sharp on the other side. That hard sharp is down. So remember, down. Take your snap rings, reload it, and install. Remember to be careful so that it doesn't spring back and get you in the face. So when reinstalling, I'll give you the first trick and tip. This front loader, rotor lobe, actually wants sitting about 3/4 of an inch above this shelf. Again, this is that shelf that the rotor sits against in that shelf clearance. So that's where we want it to be, right about there. So about 3/4 of an inch above, and then that'll help us roll the new rotor into, or the rebuilt rotor into place. It always takes a little bit of finagling to get it just right. So if you don't get it the first time, don't feel bad, because you're not alone. Sometimes you got to come back and forth a little bit until it's in there all the way. The roller bearing, you want to make sure is properly centered and goes in. You do not want to force this one up onto the outer inner race, because you could potentially push one of these roller bearings down inside and it'll interfere with the bearing. You'll never know it. So when you go to reinstall, definitely want to make sure you're good. Oh, look at that. I'm not good yet. I'll need a little bit of turning. I believe I got it now. So we'll try to set that up. Again, you're going to have a new O-ring, so you're going to have some resistance at this point. You can use the bolts to finish pulling everything up and into place. It's always helpful to get that one bolt started. You can go. Me using old O-rings or no O-rings makes this real easy. New O-rings are of course going to have a little extra effort. When reinstalling thrust bearings, again, you're going to want to make sure everything is square, tight. These might slide on with the newer bearings. You might require a little bit of force. There is, you can use that tool again to push this down and pull the rotor up into it. So it'll connect that and push it in Apply that pressure there. Once that's on, we'll install your new slide. Again, there should be a little bit of Loctite applied to these bolts. Because it's a training compressor, I'm not going to do that. Just find your set torque value. Make sure you torque those up appropriately. So we talked about the shims earlier. The shims at this point actually are what set that shelf clearance. So this rotor should be sitting down on top of that shelf right now as it is. You can confirm that with some feeler gauges, get in there, check it. What you can do is you can use a flat micrometer to come across this depth gauge, come across and measure this depth, subtract 3 to 4 thousandths, for that's what our clearance needs to be, and then that should add up to your total shim length, total shims. You can also do just check everything, as you should check everything anyways. You can always put the shims back on, reinstall it, double check your shelf clearance. I'm okay with that because you always need to double check your shelf clearance. Turn these. So you can use thin rods to come up to actually locate where this is. That is an ideal method. And also track where things are based off of the markings. That should be pretty darn close. There we go. Set those inner. Set these inner cap screws here. Don't have to necessarily tighten them up just yet. We do need to set them in place. And you can go around and locate all of these cap screws, or these regular screws. And for the one that I dropped, up. Now these should all get torqued. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Bring these down. Again, I'm lucky because this is the training compressor. They'll come apart again next week. Once they're all in, should torque them. I'm just going to tighten them. And finish up cap screws. Then I'm just going to tighten these in, some Loctite, so these can't loosen off. Causes problems down the road. Remember, when you do use Loctite, put it in the bolt holes and not just on the bolt threads. Get a complete securement and adhesion of the Loctite. At this point, you're going to get inside, you're going to get your feeler gauge, and you're going to check your shelf clearance. You're also going to make sure that everything is still spinning nice and freely. If you put a brand new gate rotor in, it is not going to spin freely. That brand new gate rotor needs to be rolled and rotated a few times before it'll move with any ease. And it takes quite a bit of force, as the main rotor is actually designed to cut and mill each gate rotor to fit for its identity. So you can't just go swapping gate rotors from one compressor to the other either. If you need to replace a gate rotor, you got to start new. You need a new gate rotor, and you expect that's not going to go. Also, if you've removed the gate rotor, maybe you want to check the backlash on the main rotor. Always double check the supports. You want to make sure that everything is still within spec and standard. Make sure that gas is properly placed. And it'll work. And as always, go down, torque the bolts. Then we'll finish up by reinstalling our lubrication tubing. I hope that was helpful and informative. Join me next time. Thank you again. I'm Ryan Osbach with Copeland, Canada, representing Vilter Compressors.